1st of December 1987, a cold and misty morning, Philip Spencer, a retired policeman, set off across the vast, mist-shrouded expanse of Ilkley Moor in Yorkshire, England. The landscape was hauntingly beautiful with its boggy grasslands and low hills, the eerie rock formations emerging from the fog like ancient guardians. Spencer was on his way to visit relatives in a village on the other side of the moor, and, being an amateur photographer, hoped to photograph the strange light anomalies often reported in the area as he travelled. As he walked, the frost-crusted ground crunched beneath his boots, and the fog seemed to close in around him, muffling the world in a ghostly silence. And despite the unsettling atmosphere, Spencer ventured deeper into the moor, carrying his camera and also a compass to navigate through the dense fog that he knew full well would be a feature of this early morning trek. At around 7 a.m, as Spencer approached a small, overgrown quarry, a sudden movement to his right caught his eye. Turning sharply, he was confronted by a sight that made him stop dead in his tracks. About 40 feet away stood a small, greenish figure, approximately 4 feet 6 inches tall. Its head was disproportionately large, with huge almond-shaped black eyes. The creature had big, pointed ears, no nose, and a small mouth. Its long, thin arms, which extended almost to the creature's feet, ended in 3 large sausage-like fingers, and its feet were V-shaped, made up of 2 big toes. For a moment, Spencer was paralysed with shock. He shouted, "Hey!" and the creature shambled away and then quickly turned around again and seemed to gesture at him dismissively with its arm. Instinctively, Spencer raised his camera and took a photograph. The flash of the camera startled the being, and it quickly turned once more and fled. Driven by curiosity, Spencer decided to follow, and he jumped down into the overgrown quarry and ran after the creature. His breath was coming in quick, frosty heaves in the cold morning air. As he rounded an outcrop, he was met with an even more astonishing sight. A silver, disc-shaped object hovering silently just above the ground. The object had a domed top and strange patterns etched into its surface. Spencer described it as 2 silver saucers stuck together edge to edge. A loud humming noise began to increase in intensity, and a box-like object disappeared into the top of the craft. And before he could react, the craft shot up into the sky with incredible speed, disappearing into the cloud cover. This encounter, according to Spencer, lasted around 30 seconds, from seeing the creature to then witnessing the silver disc flying away. Dazed and disoriented, Spencer tried to gather his thoughts. The encounter had left him shaken, but he felt, quite naturally, compelled to understand just exactly what he had witnessed. He took out his compass to get his bearings, only to find that the needle was pointing south instead of north. Confused and uneasy, he decided to try and navigate back to Ilkley to compose himself. As he walked, Spencer noticed that the light seemed unusually bright for the time of day, and when he reached Ilkley, he was shocked to see the village bustling with activity. People were shopping, and the shops were all open. He glanced at the clock on the church tower and saw that it was 10 a.m. His journey, which should have only taken about an hour, had somehow stretched into several hours. It should have only been 8:15. He's lost 2 hours of time. Disturbed by this, and by the strange behaviour of his compass, Spencer decided to develop the film in his camera. He boarded a bus to the nearest town with photo development facilities, and with a couple of hours, he held the developed photograph in his hands. The image was grainy and somewhat blurred, but it definitely showed a small, humanoid figure. Proof that he had not imagined the encounter. Seeking answers, Spencer, which is a pseudonym by the way, wrote to Jenny Randalls, a well-known author and at that time Director of Investigations at Bufora, the British UFO Research Association. He used a PO box number as the return address due to concerns about the information getting out into the press and turning his life upside down. Whilst waiting for a reply, Spencer grew more and more anxious, and so he also contacted a UFO investigator named Arthur Tomlinson, who, along with researcher Steve Ballon, agreed to visit the location with Spencer. It was quite late in the day and it was pretty dark, so the day after, Arthur visited again, and this time with another researcher named Peter Hoff. Despite initial scepticism and flatly asking Spencer if he had just brought a big foam dummy up to the moors to fake the picture, they were struck by Spencer's sincerity and the photograph's apparent authenticity. The image was analysed by experts who confirmed that it was not tampered with. Wildlife photography expert Tony Marshall from Sheffield stated that the creature did not match any known animal. The photo was taken to a screen printing company in Rochdale, and this company reputedly had a very professional photographic department, and their opinion was that this wasn't actually the original photograph, but rather a photograph of a photograph. Kodak Laboratories examined the negative, confirming that the figure was part of the original photograph. And just a brief overview for younger viewers who may, and I'm genuinely serious here, may not know what I mean by examine the negative. Now, I'm not saying younger people are uneducated about things, but let's face it, we're talking about a method of photography that a huge number of people have just never experienced due to it being replaced by digital means. So film photography involved a chemical and mechanical process where a roll of film was coated with light-sensitive chemicals and it was loaded into a camera. When a photo was taken, the camera's shutter opens briefly to expose that film to light, and it captures an image as a negative, which means it's an inverted image on the film where light areas appear dark and dark areas appear light. And after the film is fully exposed, it gets developed in a dark room or a laboratory with chemicals that reveal these negatives as a positive image. So you can use the negatives to determine whether the positive image had been tampered with in any way. Now, through an acquaintance of Jenny Randall's named Tim Good, the photo was further analysed and blown up to a large-scale view. Several artefacts were noticed, including what appeared to be some sort of pipe going down the side of the creature's head, and something referred to as the blob, which apparently looks like some sort of rectangular box and maybe the same object that Spencer witnessed flying into the top of the craft before it took off. I don't think I can really see this in the photo, mind you, and it might have been more prevalent on the negative. Can anybody else see this in this photo? The other shots in the camera were also analysed, and there was no suggestion of trickery, nothing that showed that other failed attempts at photographing a dummy, for example, were evident. It's just shots from the moors and the walk. Spencer, still troubled by the missing time and the strange encounter, agreed to undergo regressive hypnosis, which was carried out by a Dr. Jim Singleton at Arthur Tomlinson's home in 1988. Also present were Peter Hoff and a journalist named Matthew Hill. Under hypnosis, Spencer recounted an extraordinary and terrifying experience. He described how, after photographing the creature, he had been paralysed and levitated a few inches above the ground, as if tethered by an invisible string. The creature had led him up the hill and into a small quarry, where he saw the silver disc-shaped object. He was taken aboard the craft and given something of a guided tour. He saw a porthole window, and through it he felt he could see the planet Earth, despite having been standing on it several moments before. He found himself in a big, bright, round room illuminated by a sourceless white light. It had a sort of gyroscopic device spinning in the middle of the room, and the camera and compass seemed to be drawn to it in some way. A disembodied voice told him not to be afraid and instructed him to lie down on a table. Helpless and frankly terrified, Spencer complied. The green creatures surrounded him, examining him with a fluorescent tube-like device that scanned his body from head to toe. Despite the invasive nature of the examination, Spencer felt a strange sense of calm, as if the beings were somehow soothing him. After the examination, he was shown 2 films. The first depicted a grim future for Earth, filled with scenes of environmental devastation, pollution and human suffering, rivers choked with waste, starving people and war-ravaged landscapes filled the screen. The message was clear. Humanity needed to change its ways to avoid this catastrophic future. The second film, however, remained a mystery. Spencer was instructed not to speak of it, and even under hypnosis, he refused to reveal its contents. He's quoted as saying, "Well, the only way I can put it across to you is that there's certain things that you know about your wife or your girlfriend which you would never tell anyone else. And that's how I feel about the second film. It is very intimate." When the session ended, Spencer was left with a profound sense of unease. He had recalled being taken into space, seeing Earth from a distance, and experiencing a kind of cosmic perspective that left him feeling both insignificant and deeply connected to the planet at the same time. The creatures had communicated with him, not through words, but through emotions and images, leaving him with more questions than answers.
We did an interview, half-hour interview on tape, and then we suggested that, he had this missing time period. We suggested that we could do a hypnotic regression for him if we could find someone to do it, and if he agreed to it. At first he was a bit worried about hypnotism, but we reassured him, and after another week he agreed.
Here's how the hypnosis session went. I want you to cast your mind back to the 1st of December last year when you set off across the moor. I want you to clear your mind back to that, and I want you to re-experience that. I want you to tell me what you experienced. I'm walking along the moor. Oh, it's quite windy. There's a lot of clouds. I'm walking up towards some trees. I see this little something. I can't tell, but it's green. It's moving up towards me. Oh, I'm stuck. I can't move. And the creature's still coming towards me. I'm stuck. It's all gone fuzzy. I'm floating along in the air. I want to get down. I still can't get down. I don't like it. Oh, I'm going round this corner and this green thing's in front of me. Oh God, I want to get down. There's a big silver saucer thing. There's a door in it. I don't want to go in there. Everything's gone black now. You say everything has gone black. I can't see anything. It's like I'm asleep. I can't hear anything. There's a bright light now. I can't see where it's coming from. I'm in a funny sort of room. I can hear this voice saying, "Don't be afraid." I don't feel afraid anymore. I can still see this green thing, but I'm not afraid of it anymore. I'm being put on a table. I can move now, if I want to, but I don't feel frightened anymore, and there's a beam, like a pole. It's above me. It's moving up towards me. It's got a light in it, like a fluorescent tube. It's coming up from my feet, and I can hear that voice saying again, "We don't mean to harm you, and don't be afraid." It makes me feel warm as it moves up me. It's coming up over my stomach towards my head. Close my eyes. I don't want to look at it in case it hurts my eyes. It's gone. There's something in my nose. It feels a bit funny. Oh, that's gone as well. I'm standing up now. I don't know how I got stood up. I can see a door. There's one of these green creatures motioning for me to come with him. I don't really want to go with him. I'd rather stay here. I don't feel afraid in here. And can you tell me what's happening now? I'm walking towards a door, and there's still a bright light there. There's light all around. I want to know where it's coming from. It's just bright all everywhere. Walking down a corridor, and there's a window. Oh my God. Is that real? I can hear that voice again. It's saying, "You've got nothing to fear." I can see Earth. It's pretty. I didn't realise it looked so pretty. I've gone past the window now, and I'm walking down a corridor. I've come to the end of the corridor, and there's a hole opened in it, so I I can walk through. I'm in a big room now, big round room. I'm on a raised platform against the wall. My camera and compass, they're trying to get away from me. I've come to the end of the corridor, and there's a hole opened in it so I can walk through. I'm in a big room, a big round room, and I'm on a raised platform against the wall. But my camera and compass, they're trying to get away from me. They're going towards the ball. It's difficult to pull them back down again, and there's this ball moving around with strange... It's got some blocks on it, and the hole in the wall has closed. It's gone. I've got nothing to fear, they say, but I'd still really want to go home. It's got such big hands. What's happening now? Going down a corridor again. It's very bright. I still wish I knew where that light was coming from. And there's another door, going through a door. It's an empty room. Two of those green creatures have come in with me. There's a picture. It's starting to move on the wall. How do they get the pictures? And can you tell me what's happening at this point? I'm looking at the pictures on the wall. Pictures on the wall. Creatures seem concerned at the damage that it's doing. Picture changing now. There's another picture, another film. He's asking me a question. He says, "Do you understand?" I said, "Yes." And then it's time to go. Everything's gone black again. I'm walking up the moor again. I'm walking near some trees. Some movement. I can see something. Green creature. I've shouted to it, and it's turned round. I don't know what it is. I'll photograph it. It's turned round now. It's moving quick. I want to know what this is. I'm running after it. It's gone round a corner. Can't see it anymore, and there's this saucer, big silver saucer. It's disappeared. I'm walking on down now. I've gone past the trees. And now what's happening? I'm going home. It's 10 o'clock on the town hall clock. I can't understand how. It's only 8 o'clock. But you mentioned some green creatures. Would you try and describe those to me? It's quite small. He's got big pointed ears. It's got big eyes. They're quite dark. He hasn't got a nose. He's only got a little mouth. And his hands are enormous. His arms are really long, and he's got funny feet. They're like V-shape, like two big toes. Must be difficult to walk like that. He shuffles rather than walks. I don't feel afraid of him, although he looks odd. You mentioned big hands. Can you say any more about the hands? Well, it's got 3 big fingers, like sausages. Big sausages. They're just very big. Bigger than my hands. About how tall would you say these creatures are? It's about 4 foot. Comes to the lump on my stomach. He's about as high as... Well, he's just a bit bigger than my stomach is. Okay. Now, I wonder if I can ask you another question. You mentioned a film. Well, there were 2 films. 2 films. One was lots of scenes of destruction, like on the news. Can see a lot of waste going into the river, and people like Ethiopians who are starving. It's not very good. It's not very nice. Do you want to say anything more about that film? It's much of the same thing, only different, you know. And what about the other film, then? What do you want to tell me about that? No, I'm not supposed to. Well, I'll leave that up to you entirely. Do you want to say anything about that? I'm not supposed to tell anybody about the other film. It's not for them to know. Is there anything else? No. The Ilkley Moor Alien encounter is one of the most compelling UFO cases in the UK, not least because it involves this photograph that's been verified as untampered. Given the unusual physical features of the creature that Spencer encountered, it's plausible that it might have been wearing a suit and helmet. This might explain the sheen of its skin and the large pointed ears. The idea that the creature might have been wearing some kind of environmental suit fits with many reports of extraterrestrial beings needing protection from Earth's atmosphere. Sceptics, of course, might argue that the case is a complete hoax, or in fact a misinterpretation of natural phenomena. However, Spencer's photograph consistent testimony under hypnosis and lack of interest in fame or profit have added some credibility to this story. The ecological warning shown to him is a recurring theme in UFO encounters, suggesting that extraterrestrials might be concerned about humanity's impact on the planet. Why, though, would an extraterrestrial species, if in fact that's what the beings were, be at all concerned about the future of the planet Earth? If extraterrestrials exist and have the capability to visit Earth, they might be part of a broader cosmic ecosystem. The health of Earth itself could impact on this ecosystem. For instance, pollution and ecological destruction of Earth might have consequences that ripple throughout the cosmos. If advanced civilizations have technology that allows them to traverse space, they might be wary of emerging civilizations that could eventually become a threat. Monitoring and advising less advanced civilizations, like us, might in fact be a strategy to prevent potential future conflicts or threats. Getting rid of nuclear weapons, for example, would achieve this. Sorting out your ecology so that the planet has a long life would mean that we don't at some point need to become a spacefaring species and try to colonize other planets. What if the beings were not extraterrestrial but perhaps interdimensional? Well, if different dimensions are interconnected, then changes or disruptions in one dimension, such as environmental degradation of Earth, for example, might have cascading effects on other dimensions. Interdimensional beings might seek to maintain stability across dimensions to prevent negative impacts in their own realms. So what if they were ultra-terrestrial, in which case, well, we don't need to speculate, the desire to preserve Earth is pretty self-explanatory for an Earth-dwelling creature, isn't it? But why wouldn't any of these types of beings just do something about it themselves if they are so concerned, rather than impart wisdom to a random bloke wandering across the moors at 7 a.m? It just doesn't seem like a winning strategy to me. I suppose that a hypothetically advanced being might have some sort of principle of non-interference, like the prime directive that we often hear about in sci-fi, or the creed of wildlife photographers who don't get directly involved. They might believe that direct intervention could actually hinder humanity's natural development and growth and lead to dependence on them rather than self-reliance and learning ourselves. Another interesting angle is the possibility of magnetic anomalies affecting Spencer's compass. His compass, which should have pointed north, of course, instead pointed south after the encounter. The University of Manchester's Institute of Science and Technology analysed the compass and concluded it could have been exposed to a strong magnetic field or a pulsed magnetic field generated by a large amount of electricity. This aligns with many reports of UFOs affecting electronic devices and compasses. The investigation did make use of a Geiger counter actually at one stage, and there was a small recorded disturbance at the exact point where Spencer took the photo, but nothing strong enough to warrant suggestions of extraterrestrial origins. And it is possible that magnetic or radiation anomalies cause him to experience a hallucination, isn't it? But what was the source of these things? We will of course never know, will we? Is it a place of high strangeness in general? The moor is supposedly known for its manifestations of unusual lights. I did find a particular account of 1990 where author and investigator Nigel Mortimer checked into the case of what were described as burnt circles appearing all over the moor, during which some odd lights were encountered in the sky.
They seem to be significant in that these balls of light energy appear and disappear directly over these stone circles.
There's also the case of the buildings at White Wells, where a Mr. William Butterfield, caretaker of the buildings, had a very odd encounter. Once a popular spa destination, White Wells drew visitors seeking the curative properties of its waters. Mr. William Butterfield, the caretaker, encountered an unusual problem whilst attempting to open the healing baths for public use. The key, which usually turned quite easily, seemed to have melted into the lock, rendering it useless. Remarkably, once removed from the lock, the key returned to its normal state. Determined to enter, Mr. Butterfield eventually found an alternative way inside, only to discover several green, goblin-like creatures occupying the baths. The air was filled with a peculiar buzzing sound, and upon his entry these strange entities swiftly retreated back onto the moors. Some people think that the alien looks a bit like the figure in the Devil's Stone carving in nearby Copgrove. But let's just look at this thing though. I mean, It's pretty unsettling, I feel. It's sort of leaning over. If we assume it's looking towards us, then what we perceive as its right arm seems to be extended as if to maintain balance in some way, and it seems to be carrying something in its left hand, possibly, and it's pulling its left shoulder upwards as if to assist in carrying the weight, and the head's sort of crooked to the left too. I'm fairly sure I've done this pose carrying large bags of shopping back from Sainsbury's now and then. Look at the way the legs join to the body. It looks like it's got really bony hips, really short legs. I don't know, maybe it's quadrupedal, perhaps. It's the head that I find particularly odd. In various enhancements and versions of the picture, there are these lighter coloured bits at the top of the head that look really just weird. It reminds me of the eyes of this fish, actually. It also reminds me of some sort of hairstyle, maybe, or even the bumps left behind on a goat after it's had its horns chopped off. There was a theory banded round that this photo is actually someone on a bike. This being the front tyre here, this being the left leg stuck out for stabilisation, this being the right arm extended in preparation for a fall, and the whole thing tilted as if it is about to fall. This was put forward by an insurance salesman who claimed to be the guy on the bike. There might be different interpretations if we consider that the figure's actually facing away from us. I mean, I imagine you'd have some pretty heavy clothing on for an early morning December walk across the moors, wouldn't you? And you'd likely be producing some hefty vapour clouds when breathing hard to climb the hill. Maybe that's what all this stuff is around the head. Who knows? And what a shame he didn't take a photo of the saucer. What do you think about this one? You let me know in the comments below, please. Hit the like button, it's the thumbs up button in the corner there, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and share this video with your friends and all that YouTubey stuff. Bye for now.